What's up, FA Nation? I'm Matt Selz. I'm your tools manager here for Fantasy Alarm and DFS Alarm. And I'm going to take some time to give you a tutorial in the NFL lineup generator that we have here on DFSAlarm.com. There are some unique features with the NFL lineup generator that you don't necessarily find on other ones. So let's go ahead and start talking about it. First of all, you find it under the NFL menu in DFS Alarm, and right there on lineup generator. When it loads, you will see a screen that pops up like this, unless of course you have set your default to a different site, which you can do by either clicking the site logo or click on DFS site, and all of a sudden you get this pop-up here that shows you every slate for FanDuel, and then we have DraftKings, and it'll load every slate there. And we have Yahoo in here as well. We will go ahead and build on FanDuel today. You can set your default there, and once you save it, the next time you come in for the generator, it will automatically load to that default provider. So let's go ahead and take a look at the main view here. We can do a player search or a team search in this box. We can filter by position. So if we just want to look at running backs, click running back, and all you'll see right now is running back, or the same thing for wide receivers. So we'll go back to all positions for a moment. And then filters, we have playbook only and playbook and dartboard. So on Saturdays, once the playbook comes out, you can go ahead and click playbook only, and it will give you the 40 or so players that Howard usually puts in the playbook for that week. And you can build your lineups strictly off of the playbook players. For the playbook and dartboard, you'll not only get the playbook, but you will also get the 5 to 7 players that Howard throws in the dartboard piece, which are meant more for GPPs, as they are very boom or bust type plays. But it allows you to build with both. So right now we're going to go with all players. It will default to hide injured, so that you're not building with injured players. And this is where you type in the number of lineups. You can build all the way up to 150 lineups. And one last thing I forgot on the DFS site is if you would like to change your salary max for the site, this is where you do it. So right now we're going to build with a $60,000 salary on FanDuel. But if you wanted to say, oh, I only want to use 58,000, we can do that. Come down here and click save, and it will go ahead and do that for you. It'll save that setting. So in the main player page, we have everybody's checked because they're included. We got the player, we have a like, we have a dislike, and we have a lock button, which we'll get to in a minute. It shows you the game time, how many points they're averaging per game on the site, their salary for that week, their draft percentage, which we have for FanDuel and DraftKings. We are working to get Yahoo, but it's not there yet. We have projections, which it defaults to the Fanjections that are on site, but you can also, let's say you think Alvin Kamara will have a better day than that, so you can bump him up a little bit, and you'll get this yellow reset button. You can reset it and it goes back to whatever it was to begin with. This exposure percentage is what percent of your lineups this player will be included in up to the max. So right now, if you made lineups, it would put everybody in, it would say the max you could use everybody in is 100%. So there's a global slider for that. You can also change it individually. And then the value column. So this is simply points per $1,000. So it takes salary, divides by 1,000, and then divides that number, then divides the projection by that number. So, and that is specific to the site. So that is the overview there. You can download the sheet, change stuff around, and then re-upload it if you want to. This is the clear all will clear all of your settings, as we'll set those in a minute. This generate button will generate lineups, as does this generate button, so you have 2 ways of doing that. And this save button saves your settings. You can save the lineups, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now down here, this will show you what percentage of lineups these players are in, and we'll show you that when we generate in a minute. And then all of your lineups will show up here. So let's go ahead and start messing with some features here. We have the excluded tab, which nobody's in because we haven't excluded anybody. and then once you lock players, you will see them show up in the lock players. So let's say, for sake of argument, that I am very much a fan of Kyler Murray this week, and we want to lock Kyler Murray. Well, you get a lock pop up here, and let's say we want to lock Kyler Murray in 70% of overall lineup. So we'll lock him there. Now, let's also say that we are also a big fan of Chris Carson this week, because we think Seattle's going to run away and hide with the game against Tennessee, and so Carson's going to get quite a lot of work. If you click on a player that fits in multiple spots, you will see that you get multiple selections here. So let's say we want Chris Carson in 60% of our total lineups, and we're going to lock him at running back in, let's say, 70% of those. It'll show you right now that flex will get 30% and running back will get 70%. And so if you make 10 lineups, he'll show up in 6 of them, and you'll have him in flex in 2 or 3, and you'll have him in running back in the rest. So we'll go ahead and lock Chris Carson there, and now you'll see that those two guys are locked. So we feel pretty good about that. And let's just go ahead and we'll say we'll make 10 lineups, and now when you click on here, again, A, it automatically changes the number for you, and B, you can choose to unlock, or if you want to change a percentage, you can update it just like so. So for Chris Carson, see, he'll show up in 5 there and 1 in the flex at this point. So let's say if we want 65% running back, see, it automatically changed for you. Alright, so we're going to lock those two guys. Now, we're going to head over to the construction tab, and this is where the main hub of everything gets set here. The construction tab has multiple sub-tabs under it, as you can see, and we'll touch on each one of them. This first one is team preferences. So FanDuel has a default to use a max of 4 players per team. DraftKings is 5. That's why you see this 4 here. If you want to use less than that, you can change it individually for each team. Or let's say you want to avoid a team altogether this week, like the Jets, for sake of argument. If you click hide, they will no Jets player will appear in your lineups, and they will not appear in the player pool. Okay, so that's one way to hide your hide a team you don't want to use, whether it be a bad matchup or weather concerns or what have you. You can hide individual teams that way. Position preferences. This is how you can set budget allocation for each position. So let's say it's a week where you don't really have to go all that high on quarterback. You can slide this down, and that'll give you more money to use towards running back, wide receivers, tight ends, defenses. So if you really want to go hog wild and only pay for the most expensive tight ends, you can slide this all the way up and then slide the other ones down. So it'll tell you, okay, I really want to put a big percentage of my budget towards the tight end position. And you know, we can skimp kind of on the other ones to make that fit. Player preferences. This is probably the tab most people spend the most amount of time in. So we'll go over this for you here. We have value points per dollar, so that's the value calculation we just talked about. You can adjust it so that you only want the highest value guys. That could be either an expensive guy projected for a lot of points, or it could be a mid-price guy projected for a decent amount of points, or a super cheap guy projected for a mid-level points. Either way, so you can set the value projection there. You can set this is player salary. So let's say you don't want to build around anybody that's $10,000. You just want to build around guys that are a max of like 9,000. So you can set that, and then you'll avoid all of the really expensive guys to get a little bit of differentiation in your build. Projected points, again, you can change this so you can say, okay, I don't want anybody that's at 0 points. I want everybody to be above like 5 points. You can change those sliders. Draft percentage. This is, if you want to get contrarian with stuff, you might change this so that you don't have anybody over like, let's say 15% projected draft percentage in your lineup. Then we have the exposure cap. This is the global exposure cap. So let's say we want to put a global cap on guys of 70%. We just slide that down. And all of a sudden everybody in the player pool will be shown at 70% exposure. This playbook pick slider, this gets taken care of when you click playbook only plays. That'll set it automatically to 100, but if you want to skew it towards guys that are in the playbook without actually only building out of playbook plays, you can slide the slider up. Weather factors, if you want to really weight weather, like wind or rain or later in the season snow, you can slide this up and it'll change how the generator puts players from those games in your lineups. Projections, if you really want to just solely go off of projections and no other parts of the algorithm in the lineup generator, you can slide this all the way up to 100. But generally about 50% is usually a pretty decent default here. Likes and dislikes, if you really want to pile in your likes and dislikes and you spend a lot of time putting those into the player pool, you can slide this up. If you really either don't like or dislike a lot of players, or you don't necessarily care that much about it, you could slide that down. But that's generally the way that works. Player usage, the more you slide this up, the wider array of players you will get in your builds. So if you slide this all the way down, you will get a very tight pool of players that show up in your builds. And if you slide it all the way up, you'll get a wider net of players. And then variance is a new thing we've added. And it basically is to take into account that projections aren't always, that guys can go under and over projections, right? Projections are not an exact science. And so if you want to add some variance to the projections, you can slide this up and it'll go from, let's say a guy is projected for 13 points. If you slide this all the way up, maybe that guy in some lineups is only projected for 3 points, and sometimes he's projected for 17 points. It will change the range of the projection for you if you slide that up, and if you slide it down, it narrows the range of the projection for you. So you can change all of these by slider, or you can change all of these using the spider over here. So let's say we want variance to go up. You can just click and drag that point out, and you'll see all of a sudden not only did you do it here, but the slider changed. So we'll bump that up. Now for NFL, we have allow offensive players versus opposing defense. So right now that's defaulted off. So you will not have, like, if you're playing the Browns defense, it won't put any Texans in your lineup this week if this is unchecked. If you check it, it will allow you to play, Tyrod Taylor or Mark Ingram or Brandon Cooks or whoever against the Browns defense in your lineups. Generally speaking, you want this defaulted off. Because if your offense is putting up a lot of points, then the defense is not getting points. So you're going to want it defaulted off generally. But to be contrarian, you can click it. You can click it on. This is a flex preference. So basically, the general rule here is that these guys are all weighted the same. So it will default to trying an equal number of guys in each flex spot. It doesn't always do it. It just says there's no weight. So whoever you like to solve the problem and put in the flex is fine. If you want more running backs in the flex spot, all you have to do is bump this up. Doesn't even have to be a specific number. You can bump it to 60. You can bump it to 100. The other ones can stay where they are. But all you have to do is bump the one you want up. And if you want two of them over one, then just bump the one down that you don't want in the flex spot. So that's how that works for you. For team stacks, pretty self-explanatory. This is for stacking teams. So if we want, let's say, the Cleveland Browns this week, this is the percentage that we want in our lineups. So the stacks, by definition, if you have one of them, it will put it'll put them in 100% of your lineups if this is set to 100%. However, if you have multiple team stacks, it divides 100 equally by the number of team stacks. So if we get 2, the max, if this number is set at 100, the max lineups you would get the Cleveland Browns in is 50% of your builds. And then let's say you've put the Chargers stack in there, you'd get them in 50% of your builds if both of those numbers were 100. Okay, so that's how this is going to work. So let's say we want the Browns in 70%, and we want it to be a 3-player stack. You can use either a basic stack, which is the system will just figure out 3 Browns to put in the stack for you. You can use a positional stack, in which you tell it, okay, player 1, I want it to be either a quarterback or a running back. Player 2, I want it to be a running back or a wide receiver. And player 3, I would like it to be a wide receiver or tight end. Okay? The other way to do this is you can do per player settings. So you can tell it what percentage of the time you want certain players to show up in the stacks. And the max percentage in this case is 300. It's 100 times the number of players you have set in the size. So you could set Nick Chubb to 100. You could set Baker Mayfield to, let's say, 55. Jarvis Landry to 45. Kareem Hunt, let's say, 50. So you're already 250% here, which is fine because, you know, let's say Anthony Schwartz to 10%, and Njoku 10%, Peoples-Jones 10%, and Austin Hooper 10%. You're 290. Now, you don't have to max it out, but you can't go over the 300. So that's one way to do it. In this case, we're just going to do the basic. And then we'll add, let's say, the Chargers, because I mentioned them earlier. So let's go ahead and find the Chargers. They are listed with their opponent in order of team game. So let's go ahead and say we want the Chargers in 50% of the remaining 50%, and we want a 4 stack there. So we'll save all of this. And then game stacks is generally the same idea. Let's say we want to stack the Chargers. Cowboys, you can set team 1 as the Chargers. You can set the size, let's say 3, and let's say 2 here for the Cowboys. And then you can set the main percentage and comeback percentage. So let's say you want the Chargers as the main stack 70% of the time. And the Cowboys you'll get as the main stack the other 30% of the time, essentially. So that's how we do that. We're not going to worry about the game stack right now. So we'll save, and we'll close out of this, and then we're going to go ahead and generate 10 lineups. And it should generate fairly quickly for you. Now, down here you can see we got Chris Carson locked in at 60% like we said, and we got Kyler Murray locked in like we wanted because this takes into account exposure percentage. So we said we wanted Carson locked in at 60% of 70% of the exposure, so that's how that calculation gets worked. So you'll see this, right? So these are all of the different players in the lineups sorted by their percentage. So nobody's above the 70%, and it goes all the way down to 10% simply because we made 10 lineups. You can sort by position, so we've got Tyrod Taylor and Kyler Murray as quarterbacks. We've got all of these different guys as running backs in here, wide receivers. And you're going to see more Browns and Chargers in here because we use them as stacks. And then in flex, and then there's the defenses that it used. So, as you see, the lineups are in here. They are sorted to default by points high to low, but you can change that from low to high or salary remaining. And it'll tell you how much salary is remaining. Now keep in mind we did set it so that it would only use $58,000 as the salary cap there. So you can see $57,600 plus it has $400 left. That means it would set the cap at $58,000. So that's how that works. And you can also tell there's nobody above $9,000 in these salaries as well because we set that as the cap for the player salaries. So let's say, for sake of argument, that we don't like Rondale Moore being in here. We can swap Rondale Moore out by doing a couple of things. One, it will bring up 3 guys that fit into this lineup based on salary. That could be lower or more expensive, that it thinks would fit well. Or you can search for a player. So let's say, for sake of argument, we want to look for Allen. We've got Allen Robinson there. So you can do a search that way. And it won't fit Keenan Allen because it'll go above the salary cap that we have set. So we can do, that way, and Allen Robinson shows up right there. So let's replace him with DK Metcalf, and you'll see that Rondale Moore just changed from 50% down to 40%, and now we have added DK Metcalf, who wasn't previously in there. Now he shows up in there. So, and then the projection changes, and then we went over the $58,000 cap, so it'll tell you minus 17, but it'll still fit because it's less than the 60,000 in DraftKings or in FanDuel's salary cap. Okay, so that's how you can swap guys out. If you want to find lineups with certain players in them, like let's say we want to see all of the Houston Texans defense lineup. If we click the search, the magnifying glass button, it will automatically highlight and move those lineups to the front, to the top of the list here, so that you can scroll and see, and it'll highlight them. That's how we highlight those guys, and then when we're done searching, just click the magnifying glass and everything will sort back to the way that it was. Now, if we want to export stuff, you can either export this lineup or you can export all lineups. So we'll go ahead and click export all lineups. And what you will see is you will get an export that looks like this. Just save that and upload it right into FanDuel, and it'll put your lineups in for you. So that is the general run through for the NFL lineup generator. One other quick thing, we did paginate the player pool, so to keep going, there are plenty of pages over here, and the other thing you can do is set it to default to a different number of, show more players, and they are set to default to show in projection order from highest to lowest, but you can sort by almost all of these columns here. So that is a quick run through for the NFL lineup generator on DFSalarm.com. If you have any questions, you can always hit me up in Discord. You can also email support@fantasyalarm.com, and we will be around to help you with that. So enjoy the NFL season. It's a pretty powerful tool, and it has been spitting out winners for quite some time now for NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, NASCAR, PGA, and coming soon is college football as well. So hope you all enjoy, and we'll see you in the green.